Greetings. This is a different kind of video than the ones I normally shoot. This is going to be describing an experimental guitar. I do a lot of experimental guitars, and this is the first video that I'm going to do that really shows how the instrument was made and a few things about the instrument. That means this is going to be a really long video. I'm not going to try to shorten it up. It is just going to be what it is. So this is, point over here, I guess, the what I call my Dutch guitar. And I only say that because it started out as pretty much a copy of a guitar made by a Dutch builder. A friend of mine who also was a student of Segovia bought that guitar, and it was a very interesting instrument, and he loved it. He ended up getting rid of it because it was too heavy, and it actually cut off the circulation in his legs when he was trying to play it. And that guitar weighed 8 pounds. So I was able to, with his permission, examine that guitar and learn as much as I could about it, and then do whatever I wanted with that information. This guitar has a number of those features, as it were, and I'll describe those as we go. So let's start out. This is the guitar as finished. You can see a number of my other guitars in the back. And I'm going to just go through and tell you about how I built this thing and what the whether it relates to that original guitar or not, how many of these are my ideas, and hopefully whether they actually had any effect that I could tell. So let's start this as a slideshow, because I don't think anyone wants to stare at me, and we'll get this show on the road. Okay, so this is the guitar. Has a double top. It's a cedar double top guitar. It has a pad under the bridge that's balsa wood. I'll show a little bit later what's on the inside there. It has a Bois de Rose set of sides on it with an Indian rosewood back. At the time, I had no idea what the Bois de Rose wood was. I had a bunch of it, didn't know what it was, and I had a bunch of extra rosewood backs, and so I just put them together, not knowing really what they were. So this is the sides bent, and this is the lining, at least one piece of it. I believe this is pine, and so it's a fairly thick, at least 1/4 of an inch deep, and we'll see how that goes in, like that. Now, this is not how I glued it in. It just shows this one section, how I glued that section in, or at least shows it glued in and then held down with some clamps. So that's fine. This is how I glued it in. I have a whole bunch of cauls so that it actually compresses the lining in to the sides and allows a good glue joint. Now, I also tend to use polyurethane glue, which expands so that any joint area that is not in direct contact gets filled in with the polyurethane glue. It's really not an issue in terms of holding on. It's a great glue for this particular purpose. And this is finished what that looked like. But I didn't leave it that way. There's another view there. I put in some rosewood veneer so that the inside surface is not pine, but is rosewood. I did this for reflective qualities, and although honestly I think pine reflects just fine, but being a harder, denser wood, the veneer gives you more of that reflective quality, I think. Now for the back, this is actually a 3-piece back. it starts out with a fairly thick piece of, a relatively thick piece of Indian rosewood, and then this piece of sycamore on top of that, and then another veneer similar to what was on the sides. Let's go past that for the moment. This is how I did this, because this is an arched back, and I needed everything to move and glue into place as an arch. So it's sitting on my arched form in that point, and it uses the vacuum press to glue this all together. The slots in that square pattern allows that larger piece of wood to bend and glue into place. You can see here the whole thing assembled, sides and back, but I've got another, a few here out of order. This is showing the actual assembly of the back. So there we've got that. It's all trimmed down so that it could fit directly into the sides, fit perfectly, and glue up. So that's a really solid piano-like structure for the back and sides. There's another shot of the same basic thing. I believe that this rosewood is what's called Amazon rosewood. As far as I know, that's really just a name for Dalbergia nigra Brazilian rosewood that's not grown in Brazil. So, who knows? A little close-up of the joint work on that. Very Brazilian rosewoody kind of look to that. Not completely and totally, but really close. Now here's the start of one of the things that I did that I know for a fact the Dutch builder didn't do, and that is build this block under the upper bout. The idea being that we don't really want the upper bout to take part in the sound of this instrument, other than as a vehicle for the air resonance and for the air, vibrating air moving in and out of the sound hole. You can see here that I did some different kind of stuff here. I didn't just leave this as a block. I actually put some chambers in this, and we'll see a little more of that later. Now, one of the things that the Dutch guitar had was these little sound deflectors in various parts of the instrument. And since I have, on this, I have some holes. I don't know if you can see that up there. There are some holes up in there at the very top, and you can see the light coming down through there. So the idea is that would extend the length of the air cavity up into kind of a U shape here on each side of the sound hole. So theoretically then, this should help deflect the air, the moving air, up into those cavities. And on the back side as well, the Dutch guitar that I was looking at had deflectors similar to this. Had a couple of them, not just this one, maybe three. It was difficult to see inside that guitar for numerous reasons. Another view of that. Now, I did put a few coats of shellac on the inside. You'll notice there is no bracing in here. There's absolutely no need for any bracing on the back. So we have a smooth surface here, and the deflectors on each end. Now notice that there's some tape around here. That's to keep the shellac off of the veneer, because that's where that sound hole support board is going. And there with the tape taken off. Actually, yeah. You can see the block here. This is obviously going to be a bolt-on neck. And there again, you can see the holes a little bit better up there. Another view of the back side there. Okay, now this is the bracing pattern. This is the best I could do when I looked inside that guitar as to what its bracing was. Now ignore the upper bout, because this has to fit into that hole in the I don't know what I would call it, the reverberation hole, whatever you want to call it, redirectional hole. But this is what it looked like to me looking inside that guitar. And it has numerous rosewood strips going across the instrument. The bridge, of course, is right here in the middle. And then 4 rather tall and thin braces going underneath the part of the bridge where the strings are. That's where all the pressure is going to be put. And so we have that. Now I started out with these, I don't know, about 7 millimeters tall, 2 to 3 millimeters wide, and after I played it for a while, I didn't like the sound of it, so I brought these down to about 5 millimeters, which is, I believe, what it is now. Rather difficult to do from inside that guitar, but I did that. So this is the only photo I'm going to have of this particular bracing pattern. This is the only guitar I've done this bracing pattern on. It's okay. I guess it depends what you want to hear. So now here we see that I not only made these chambers, but I put openings into the sound hole area. And here I'm putting the top of that. This is all going to be glued to the underside of the top. So we've got these holes being glued in here. There's a close-up of that. And then I wanted to be able to test this with and without these holes being open to the sound hole. So there's that without the clamps. So I made plugs, and here you can see the inside of this plug, the outside of that plug, which allow me to put the plugs in and only have this as an opening, or open up one or both of these plugs to have this opening go directly to the sound hole. And there's that ready for the top to be glued on. Now this is after it's all together. This is what the back looks like. You can see the Indian rosewood back along with the Madagascar rosewood water rose sides. Now I should mention, this is the only view I've got of the back of the neck at the moment. And I've got a mahogany heel, but a water rose neck. The original Dutch guitar had a full ebony neck, and that neck extended through the body of the instrument all the way to the tail block, and it had holes drilled through it so that it was kind of an industrial looking thing. That's one of the things that contributed to that 8-pound weight. This guitar weighs 5.8 pounds, so it's that's 0.8, not 5 pounds 8 ounces, but 5.8 pounds, very close to 6 pounds. And there you can see the Bois de Rose. It's got a little bit of a green stripe here, and you can see the inside of that. I believe it's also sycamore piece there, with which we have a rosewood veneer wrapped around the inside of that. And then the opening you can see there. Ebony fretboard, of course. And now this actually functions a little bit like a Tornavos and helps lower the air resonance. And there's all sorts of experiments that are kind of fun to do on this. Whether it actually tells you much, it's hard to tell. I might point out the medullary rays on this piece of cedar here. Even though it's just a veneer on the double top, it's really a nice piece of wood. And there you have it. So wherever my yeah, there I am. So there you have it. I don't know how long that is. Certainly longer than most of my videos, but I wanted to show you the inside of what this guitar looked like. Now, some questions have been asked about the sound. These kinds of guitars are very interesting to me. Unless you have a sound port up on the side here, these guitars do not sound all that loud to the player because everything's going forward, and of course the player is above and behind the instrument. So to me, this is not a particularly impressive sounding guitar if I was just going to walk into a music store and play it, for example. In fact, in a small room, it's not really even all that impressive. But for someone standing out in front of it, I've been told when I play it that it's really quite loud, which is an interesting, get your head around that kind of thing. The sound quality of it is really quite unique. The quality of the notes is very tight and precise. There's a difference you hear as a player, but again, that may just be because you're sitting behind the guitar. Most other guitars that don't have this huge, thick back actually have some sound that comes from the back, even if the back is fairly thick. I tried to eliminate that with this guitar, and I think I succeeded, because you don't hear much from behind it, but you hear quite a bit from in front of it. So, put your questions in, see if I can answer any issues you might have, any questions.